Here we go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Weird Boom Indie Comics Podcast, or the Boom Weird, whichever way you want to do this. I am Jim, and I'm here with my man Rocky from the Comic Boom channel. What up, Rocky?
Yeah. Well, what up? I'm happy. The second week in a row here that we're consistently reviewing some indie comics, all issue ones for me. So it's pretty good. It's a nice change from doing with at least with me doing DC all the time. So it's pretty.
Exactly, yeah, and me doing DC Marvel and the manga, even though I warned you last week that I was gonna slip in some manga, I thought it was gonna be more down the road. It's gonna be tonight because we'll talk about something that I was glad you actually told me a little behind the scenes that you did like it enough, so that got me all excited, but it's kinda your dip your toe into the manga world of things as well, right?
Yeah. It's actually my first manga comic that I've ever read, to be quite honest. And I've heard a lot about manga, and I'm glad I did. And it is, a spoiler alert. It is actually my favorite of the three that we're going to be reviewing this
Yeah,
week.
that's
So it's
crazy, right?
yeah. So it's not the other two were decent enough, but no,
Yeah,
Chainsaw Man, a crazy name, but an interesting title. And yeah, it'd be
it
fun
is,
talking about
and
it.
obviously, this is for the week of July 13th as we do these books, and we have been since we just started this, and this is the second week, as you said, and we're gonna go more to number ones when we end up, grabbing some things at first. And we said this last week, we'll end up continuing on some of these things as we go, as we kind of lay the base down with stuff and whatnot. So the two that we have, and I'd like to mix it up, and I'm sure you would as well. The two that we're doing, though, besides the manga, are Image comics. It's not just because we're going to center on just Image. I know that that could be something that people, might end up doing because there are some big books coming out. It just happened that two of the number ones were coming out from Image, and I like them enough. When we get into these, but like you said, Chainsaw Man, when we get to that, and there's a reason why, and there's kind of a behind the scenes reason why I asked you to read it, and we picked it for this week. That we'll talk when we get to that. But I didn't know anything about Impact Winter or Above Snakes before picking them. It was just number ones. We're throwing it together. Did you know anything about them?
No, I knew nothing about them, and like you, I was actually surprised about Impact Winter as we'll talk about it. It's actually it started off, I guess it's an audible audio podcast as well as
Yeah.
so, which is quite interesting. And Travis Beacham, the writer, does have some history. I think he co-wrote producer of The Walking Dead, and he's got quite a background, and I think some of
Yep.
his experiences I think shows in the writing, which I thought was actually pretty good for
Yeah, and we'll start with that, right? And he also did some Pacific Rim stuff like that as well. And yeah, I agree. It's one of those where not even knowing what was happening or what it was about by the end, when I did end up looking, because at the end there's like a little letter from him and he's talking about things. And he says, "Hey, I hope that people who listen to the podcast enjoyed this as a prequel of podcast." And so I went and looked it up. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's pretty cool." And the weird play is that he may have hooked me a little in that backwards backdoor way, because if this was more for people who already listen, I'm actually intrigued enough by this prequel to maybe even check out an episode or two of the audio drama just to see how well it was done and whatnot. But it's Impact Winter number one, written by Travis Beacham with art by Stephen Green and Matt Hollinsworth, obviously published by Image Comics on July 13th today as we record for 4.99. And here's the solicit. It's been 1 year since a comet hit Earth and blotted out the sun. Now the world is a dark, cold landscape ruled by vampires. In the British countryside, a band of survivors was formed a resistance in the fallout shelter of a medieval castle. Among them is Darcy, a young, headstrong fighter waiting for the chance to prove she can be, on the front lines. But when that opportunity comes, Darcy will come to face with the true horrors of this new world. From creators Travis Beacham, Pacific Rim, and artist Stephen Green, Hellboy, and BPRD. So that's pretty cool. Comes the prequel to the hit Audible drama original. And that's the thing. When I ended up, you're going through this, and I knew it was a one shot. At least I knew that. So as I was reading it, I started thinking, like, how is this going to tie up well enough that I'm satisfied by the end, and then finding out it was a prequel to the Audible drama, then I realized, "Okay, I get it now," because there are some things in this that I actually wanna see more of, especially Darcy, the lead character, because they're hinting at things of how much bigger and better that she probably is in this, almost like a little Buffy vibe, especially with the vampire deal. I actually was shocked. I don't know about you when you go into this and you start with this whole, you know, a comet hits. It's not a nuclear winter, but it's very similar to it. A comet hits, pretty much like what happened with the dinosaurs. There is this winter going on planet wide, and when vampires popped up, I was I was actually shocked. I did not know or think this was going to be a vampire deal. I thought it was going
Yeah.
to be more of a survival, post-apocalyptic survival type thing. So I was
Yeah.
shocked. But how
Well,
about you?
I would just add to that, Trevor Beecham in his comments at the end of the one shot, he makes the commentary that he actually alludes to that because he said that he said most people think when they start reading this, you're thinking 28 days later because you're thinking the comet
Mhm.
led to the vampires, and it's kind of a 28 days later kind of story, but it ends up being more of a Bram Stoker's Dracula because
Yeah.
because there's it's even though the comet creates this impact winter, it's the vampires have already existed. So while
Mhm.
we're thinking maybe sci-fi, but yet it does, as you read it, have more of a traditional vampire hunter kind of feel to it, which is very interesting. So he was right by making those two allegories.
I agree, and it's funny too because as you're going through this one shot, you almost have at the back of your mind at points like, "Okay, are they gonna show us that like, how do vampires cause a comet?" They're like,
Yeah,
"That doesn't make sense," and thank God they don't even try it, and
yeah,
even in that, you do even have characters mention, Bram Stoker and even bring that up, the idea of it, but I like the idea without me or you listening to that audible drama there. I ended up liking the characters, and I thought that the character work was pretty good, and it was one of those where he gets you up to speed pretty quick. You end up not having too many characters to worry about. That's one of the other things that some people tend to do that's a mistake, and you get a connection with Darcy, especially because the first thing you see is she's out and about, and she's trying to find something for her little sister. She's talking about her family having been dead, how her mom, she promised her before she died. And a lot of the things going in don't necessarily mean dead by vampires either. She even says her dad died even before this comet. And I thought in a play where they're in this mansion felt a little bit like it was playing around with the pandemic, even the shutdown where they have to stay inside and her sister hasn't even seen the sky for a year. I thought that it was well played out, and I got up to speed with the rules because they're just vampire rules, and that's what I also like. You said it's like the Bram Stoker deal. It's like a classic vampire tale. You just happen to have a comet make it so that they can walk around and do whatever they want, but you don't change too many things. You don't need to explain too many. They're vampires, and you go in. But I did like it, and I like the way that some of these scenes, even seeing as the vampires they bury the people who they're gonna turn and they're gonna come up, and that causes Darcy some problems, and you see right away she's not really ready to be out and about, but, she is. She's trying to be on the front lines, as it's said, so I think that she's a pretty tough, lead character, and I thought that was well played.
yeah. I agree, and I should say. One of the things I never discovered what her last name was in this. I think I found out when I read the in the back, but she's got a cool last name too. It's Dunraven, so Darcy
Yeah,
Dunraven. So it's kind of a cool name. I always love alliterations like that because
I do too.
yeah, and I love her. She's got one of her co-stars or fellow vampire hunters here is a guy by the name of Godwin. Her
Mhm.
sister's name is Hope. There's this Jepson character. He's a
Yep.
former MI6 operative. He's sort of like the father figure. He's sort of training her. There's something special about Darcy. She there, and most people notice it. She has a light within her, and maybe
Mhm.
it's definitely has it does have some Buffy vampire slayers vibes, which I think you alluded to,
Mhm.
and there's even a hints of a love interest here with this Godwin character, and you can when it's confirmed at the end that this is a prequel, you really get that it makes so much sense because it's
It
this
does.
it because it because I'm kind of looking forward to. I was surprised at how much I actually enjoyed this because on the one hand, it kind of felt I thought, well, at first I thought, is this going to be kind of predictable, and yet it's the
Yeah.
character work. It's the character work that saves this for me in a way that really surprised me, and it didn't surprise me at all to hear that Travis Beacham does have some experience producing The Walking Dead, because The Walking Dead is a TV show. I mean, what makes that show is the character work, and
It's the
I think
characters, it is.
yeah, you can see kind of some of his experience that he brings that to this comic, and to really great effect, because I could really feel Darcy's emotions as she ultimately ends up having to confront her fellow vampire hunter Godwin, who ends up unfortunately becoming a vampire, and of course her interactions with her younger sister, and just her just the rapport, the dialogue's very good. The art by Stephen Green, I think, really works here.
Mhm.
The coloring by Matt Hollingsworth is excellent. I think Hollingsworth does a lot of the coloring on. Uh, doesn't he do the coloring on Sean Gordon Murphy's?
Yes, yep.
Uh,
Yeah, I believe he does. The White
yeah,
Knight stuff and
yeah,
and
White Knight,
and that
and
stuff. Yep, yeah.
Admiral Design is the letterer. This really all comes together quite well here. This is actually an A-list team
It is.
of writers here.
It's like a surprise. Like,
Yeah,
I didn't know anything about it, and then when you really look into it and when you say about The Walking Dead, you're dead on. Now, I'm more of a fan and do the podcast on a comic book Walking Dead deal, but again, that extends to the TV show as well, where it is that thing where people who pish-posh that end up "Oh, I don't need zombies." I mean, a young Eric Shea said the zombie craze was over, not realizing that that book really hinges on the characters, not the zombies. The zombies are there that sets up the conflict, and it becomes more of even down to the point of who's more dangerous, zombies or humanity. Now, this ends up, like you said, though, if you really say, okay, what are the actual set pieces? What are the actual scenes? There's not that many, but it's more of the character work that drives it. And you end up by the end, like I said, and I'll even say it more when we get to the manga at the end. I think that what a lot of times, Western comics especially doesn't they don't get is if you are behind the characters, you'll go off to any story they're in. And that is a solid base. If you are intrigued by the characters and like the interactions, the story then can progress from that and you will follow them more because that's what you really get attached to, the characters. And you do get attached to, Darcy here, and you play with the tropes and the cliches of, she's a young girl, she wants to fight. I mean, you even get like a little Mulan in this. You get the,
yeah,
like you said, Vampire Slayer, Buffy stuff. You get all that. Even with that, I thought that Jepsen, he reminds me of the Earth One Alfred Pennyworth, even with the MI6, and he
yeah,
feels like almost like an Alfred
yeah.
in
He
this as
does.
well.
Yeah,
And so I really like that idea, and I sometimes that's something that really gets me is the idea when somebody can grab something that has the familiarity of a bunch of different ingredients, but when you put it together, it's something new. So you don't have to have too much of a setup. You don't have to explain too much. Like I said about the vampires, pretty much the same rules. It's very quick. You can stab in the heart. You don't need wood. Anything will do. I think that might be a play of at some point, maybe a lot of the wood and trees are all going to die, and then you really don't have it around, so that allows you to keep going. I don't know, but you behead them. That's the big deal. Okay, you set it up. I'm in, and you do introduce the characters, and you like them. Even Godwin, when you're introduced to him, it's very quick, but you do kind of get a connection through Darcy with that, even as they're kind of making out, they're smooching
yeah,
and they go off, and it is a shame because he ends up going off, and like you said, he gets turned, but everybody kind of leaves him behind. You have that play of, well, they're done. If they're not here, we have to forget about them. This is how you would be doing it in a post-apocalyptic vampire war. You can't just go and run and get anybody. But Darcy, that's what makes her special, and they keep saying, like you said, Jepsen says there's something about her. She's going to rule the world. You even have vampires see her differently as somebody with this weird, aura and energy. And she doesn't know it, though. That's what I like. She's not aware of that. So that makes her, it's not like she's pompous or going off to do things because I'm better. She's just trying to do her thing.
yeah.
And she doesn't realize how special she is. And I do like
and
that a
and
lot.
that fact is reinforced at the end, which the final two pages really intrigued me, because what I believe are the sort of the villains or the antagonists
Yeah.
of the piece, this Rook and Finn character, this female character named Finn, I think is I'm getting the impression is one of the leaders of this vampire clan and this Rook character. And Rook almost talks about again talks about how this he comments about Darcy being special, being different. And I kind of like how they're playing it's not immediately apparent to me that Rook and Finn, who are the antagonists, that they're necessary. They don't come across like evil or bad guys, and yet
No.
clearly, I'm assuming they are. And I got to admit, we're coming to this a little bit backwards because apparently there's an entire
Yeah.
audio story behind this. But I'm actually intrigued, and what I
I'm
really like
liking
about
that we
this,
don't know that. I'm liking
yeah,
that we can read this and actually come up with theories
yeah,
not knowing what the
exactly,
deal is.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's cool.
uh,
One of the things too, like you said, just quick before you go on,
yeah,
the idea that they don't feel like that feels very much Bram Stoker Dracula. I mean, you end up where if you end up reading, Bram Stoker Dracula or some of the other like gothic horror, like that is more subtle than, you know, zombies or vampires running around and having, rave parties like in Blade. It's not like
yeah,
that. It's very much the lineage, it's like aristocracy, the way they play it out. And that's how they came across to me. They came across as kind of like, a little bit of royalty there. And at the end, I did like it because the idea that Godwin, he was able to keep his own face. You end up having this Rook character who turned him said, well, we were going to have him go back. He was
yeah,
going to be our spy. He was going to check him out. And then when Finn says, oh, that's the problem with some that they keep their wits and all that about them, they end up having their own ideas. I think that she's also reminding Rook to mind his, P's and Q's. I think that she might be also because she says she turned him. And I think it's like, yeah, you better, watch yourself because even when he's looking out, he looks forlorn. He's like the vampire looking out the window as it's raining. He looks
yeah,
sad, the sad vampire.
yeah.
But I did like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and what's interesting about this is that I would say to anyone listening to the podcast or watching this, if they're watching it on YouTube, is the
Yeah.
great thing about this is that you can actually just click on the QR code. You can just Google Impact Winner, and even if you don't want to buy the comic, you can actually go and actually for I think it's a couple bucks, you can listen to the first audible of
Okay.
this story, which neither you and I have done yet, but. It's
No.
I like the option here, and I think I think it's I really like write creators like this that think outside the box. That you
Hmm.
know, it's not just comic books, but it's something else as well. I mean,
It's
because
a
we can
lot
all
of
be
things. Yeah.
yeah. So I like it, and I'm intrigued enough. And what a compliment to say that I have a sneaking suspicion that hopefully the people on the Audible will pick up the comic. But picking up the comic, I one of the things I certainly plan to do sometime this week if I find the time is I'll pay the few bucks and listen to the Audible story
Exactly.
as well. So
And it's funny, I'm with you 100%, and I will tell you that I'm actually liking this more and more as we're talking about it too. I'm getting a little excited about it, and what I like what you said about having it connect with the, Audible deal. That's what something that I really, really thought was cool, and it's something that's a little passé now. But when I first saw it with again Buffy, where they were continuing the series in the comics. Now, a lot of things do that now, like I said, but when I first saw that, I thought that was the coolest thing. Like, oh my God, a series gets canceled. You can end up having a comic. There is no budget. You don't have to, and you could, the sky's the limit. I always thought that that was cool. And I think that this is kind of a cool deal too. And it makes sense to make it a prequel because if we ended up and this was like the end, all of a sudden we wouldn't know what's going on. So it wouldn't serve us well. But because it's a prequel, we're kind of in, and we're gonna go check it out. What would you give it?
uh, I'm like you, I, I was inclined to give this 7.5, but talking with you, I'm actually more excited about it now uh,
Yep.
because it's connected the Audible podcast. But so
Mhm.
I'd go 8.5. I'll be nice, give it
Yeah,
an
I think I'm
8.5.
gonna go 8.5 as well.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I think I was originally like a 7, 8,
yeah,
maybe an 8. I do like the art. I do like the setup, but yeah, by the end, and I said while I was reading it, I'm looking. I know, how long it's about, and I'm like, I must be near the end. So what's going on? Because is this the whole story? And I expected by the end it was just going to be this may continue down like hey if it sells we'll do a trade whatnot, but finding out that it was something I could listen to on Audible, I actually did, and well served here to get the characters and kinda get behind them because, again, to me, that's why you go and wanna hear more of the story, these characters and whatnot, so I thought that was really well done. So, yeah, 8-5 from both of us. It's a shock.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it actually did better. Hopefully, we'll end up thinking the same thing with the next one, which is Above Snakes, number 1, chapter 1. It says it's called Speck of Dirt. This issue, it's written by Sean Lewis with art by Hayden Sherman, lettering by Hassan Atsamane El Hua. And in the solicit of this, this is not an audible drama, so we don't have to worry about that. But it is a mini series premiere. It says the hit team behind The Few and Thumbs returns with an all new Wild as Hell miniseries. Writer Sean Lewis, King Spawn, artist Hayden Sherman, Wasted Space, and rock star letterer Hassan Atsami El Hua. I didn't know he was a rock star letterer. Introduce a world where Deadwood style westerns collide with the fantasia of Neil Gaiman in the story of Dirt, a man seeking vengeance for his murdered wife with nothing but a talking vulture to prod him on. Above Snakes' Fast and Furious explosion of Western tropes and American vengeance that explores where our rage can take us. I'll tell you right now, if you ended up just wanting to check this out, you can look at it as almost a one shot. You do get a complete story in this. It will continue on as Dirt, our main character, continues on himself, but you could just check in here, enjoy it, and get out. I enjoyed it. I thought that it was pretty good. It ended up surprising me as I went on because at first I was a little bit confused. I was trying to get my bearings straight, whatnot. And it is a basic story, but by the end, I'm reading it twice actually, I ended up liking it more. Even the second time that I read it, there's some awful people in it, though. I mean, this is not like a nice tale. And
Yeah.
so when you get into it now, and it's funny too because at the beginning in the first scene, I actually thought that the art looked a bit like a Daniel Warren Johnson art, but it ends up changing a bit. And I do like the art, it's stylistic. I do like that. Again, this is a little different than what we just saw. That the character is kind of like that, drifter. We learn enough about him to get his motivation to get going, but he really is driven by one thing, and that's revenge for his wife being killed. And I can go with that in this issue. Like I said, maybe if you keep going, maybe I'll need a little bit more, but I like this enough. How about you?
Well, like I gotta say, I'm a huge Jonah Hex fan, and I take
Okay.
pride in my pride cometh before the fall, but I don't care. I take a lot of pride in my Western DC comic and Marvel
Mm,
collection. I love Jonah Hex, and I'm used to Western tropes, and I generally like them. I thought, but I have to say, even when I recall fondly, my just Jimmy Palmiotti. Jonah Hex
yeah.
run, and there's a lot of tropes in there, but there's always a hook. So even if Jimmy Palmiotti would write another revenge tale with Jonah Hex, there was always a hook. There was something different with each story. And I gotta say here, I was actually a little bit disappointed here. I only because first of all, let me have a little bit of fun with this. The
Yeah.
bird, this is a guy that his name is Dirt. First of all, I'm wondering
Yeah.
why is his name Dirt? Now,
Yeah.
I can't,
Yeah.
and it's funny. And he wakes up in the desert and he starts talking to this bird, and the bird's name is Speck. And the
Yeah.
title to the story is called Speck of Dirt. And I don't know why I find that absurd, but the title is actually,
Yes.
the story is actually called Speck of Dirt. The bird's name is Speck. The guy's name is Dirt. It's a revenge tale. They wander through the desert. The bird that he's hallucinating seeing is either a spirit of vengeance, is either
Mhm.
maybe a demon or maybe an angel of death guiding him. It's sort of like The Crow meets Unforgiven, you know?
Yeah.
And he wanders into the town where he's looking for like somebody with a black bandana who's gonna give him hints as to where he can go to find the people that took his wife. Because this is the tale of Dirt and Dorothea.
Dorothea, yeah.
Dorothea. I don't know how to say.
Dorothea, yeah, it's a weird name. I'm
Yeah,
telling you, I could go either way.
yeah, and then he just goes into the town and he kills all the people that deserve to be killed, and then he kind of wanders off, and that's it. And to make it even more kind of unspecial, he's not even unique. He actually says in this story that everybody in the town. This is 1866. He
Mhm.
wanders into a town. This is in the Genesis Desert, and he says everybody's looking for revenge. Everybody's looking to avenge somebody. The only difference of
Yeah, they
with
have like a little like boys club that they end up
yeah,
meeting up to with each other.
I
It's not
know.
like they plan it, but they end up each town is like, "Oh man, Harry's here. I guess he's still out for revenge." Now, with that, I agree 100%. I still liked it a bit, but like I said, I think that I look at it as a one shot where I don't know because, like, I agree 100% that by the end, I don't think there's enough of a hook for me to watch this over again. The idea of this Doctor Tomb that we see at the beginning, he's there. He looks crazy, like in a luchador mask. He's got a bunch of medicinal miracle cures that you would have. Another trope of the old West deal, but in that there's that weird double narration and even the idea that this dirt says, "Oh, all those things there, those are all my history," and you see little things in the bottles, and I was confused by that. That's kind of intriguing, but not enough because once we get to the story, you said it gets a little bit generic. It does. I thought that what the play here is, and the wanderer, the man in black, the idea, a lot of the tropes in a Western deal is that generic, drifter, but I don't know in this that it doesn't hook you because he's the main character, and you throw in Speck, this bird that is, again, that's intriguing, wondering what that is, but by the end, you don't really get any hints, really. You just have a pretty basic, "I'm going into town, I'm gonna kill everybody because my wife was killed," and the one thing that he has is when he went home he was at in war, you would assume if this is all on the up and up deal, he's in the Civil War, he ends up coming, and that's a very Jonah Hex thing as well. And he comes back, his wife's dead, and he finds these bandanas all around.
Uh,
And it is pretty quick to get to like you almost wanted to have more of an investigation here, or more of a hey, let's go through three towns, see what's going on, make things interesting, set some things up. But he
yeah.
kind of just gets right to where he has to go. And the big twist at the end is just a lady who's pretty much sold out her mute daughter to be, a prostitute. It really you're right. I mean, here's the funny thing. I got all excited for the first book when we're talking about you're talking me down here. It's like I'm on the ledge, but because I did at the end, I wasn't upset. I just ended up like, okay, that was kind of interesting, I guess. Maybe the play here for me was not a lot of Western comics at the moment. So maybe that is, and I'm with you. I do like Jonah Hex. I'm only really familiar with the new 52 Jonah Hex, with Jimmy Palmiotti, Justin Gray, and them
Yeah.
doing it more top, that sort of deal. But I
Yeah.
do like that.
Yeah.
And it is something a little different here. But maybe that's why, because when you start pointing out there's not really
Well,
it's not anything over the top special, and then you really play off the idea that these characters really are just dirt and speck. I
yeah.
mean, it's
Well,
that's
yeah, that's right. Dirt, speck of dirt, speck and dirt. And what's funny is I think what would have worked better for me if I would almost I wish I'd know if we got more of flashbacks of him experiencing the
maybe see his
emotion of
wife.
the loss of
Yeah,
his wife or the loss because I never felt like I connected to this character because it's funny comparing this to Impact Winter. In fact, all the comics we're reviewing this week have one very
yeah, yeah,
interesting
very
thing in
similar.
common. They're all kind
Yeah,
of tropey a little bit. They deal with
yeah,
tropey
yeah,
themes, and yet Chainsaw Man has, I think, the best character development. And the one we just reviewed, sorry,
yeah, the Infinite
Impact
Winter
Winner
or
has,
Impact Winter, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
was kind of tropey, but had good character development. This one, I didn't feel like I knew that this was just kind of a. He did a lot of talking. He talked with his bird a lot. He told us about he was out for revenge,
True.
but it felt hollow to me. It didn't feel like I connected to the character, and
Mhm.
so, and I don't know if I think I lack the ability to exactly articulate why, but it just never
Well,
really
I'll
hit
I'll
me.
tell you, if you ended up and we go Impact Winter, if you ended up having Darcy go off you end up having a connection because if she does die, the setup and we met the little sister, you have a connection with that. She's there for her, so you have that base of why you're worried about things and why you're behind and all this. Even the idea that our parents died, all that, you don't want that to happen again. In this, you're right. Maybe you did need a scene. Maybe you needed something to see how different he is now. Like at that point, maybe the idea was when his wife died now he doesn't mean anything. And he even goes with the idea like he doesn't care if he lives or dies. He's there for revenge. If I die doing it, so I'm just dirt. Like you might even want to have that to show where he doesn't feel like he's anything because his wife was so great and he
Uh,
misses her. But just the idea of I miss my wife and she was killed, you don't really
uh,
that's a trope of a lot of these things,
uh,
including westerns. So you kind of like, oh, that, and then it is funny.
well,
Why
well,
did he have it where everybody else in the bar was the same deal? Oh,
exactly.
he's there. They all died. So
Yeah,
it's not even like his revenge story is interesting enough to be different.
He's not
It's all the
unique.
same.
He's not a
Yeah,
unique character.
no.
Everyone's the same.
Yeah.
I thought one thing that might make him stand out. I was expecting he would be revealed to be dead. Like maybe it was going to go like the Crow. Like
Yeah,
maybe
I
he's
did
actually
too,
dead.
actually.
Like he woke up in the desert comatose, and I thought maybe he actually was killed in the desert, and we get a flashback of him being killed, and this bird, this speck, is bringing him back to life as a spirit of vengeance. And I thought, well, that's a little bit too close to the Crow, and maybe they wouldn't do that. But we don't even get that. So I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
maybe we'll get something in
Yeah, and and it is
subsequent.
kinda crazy, the idea when you talk about it, because when you look, it's a weird play that this bird usually you would have, like, an eagle or it's a vulture. I mean, that's already, kinda hinting at some, but you're right, it maybe, and when the vulture, "I need blood," he says, "I need to feed on blood." Like, okay, what does that mean? And is that the idea that, you got something going on behind that, this imaginary thing that he's thinking up is actually him, needing something. It is odd, like you said. It is a shame that it does get a little bit more tropey than character work, and then by the end, you kind of just see him, and then he's going to get this guy, the guy who's in charge of this gang, but we don't know anything about that. Like everything seems to be really pushed forward too quickly to really know or get a feel for it. This Cobber guy. Oh my God, he's risen in this gang. We don't know the gang. We don't know him. And then when he gets there, he ends up pushing him out. This guy seems to get castrated, but that's off panel. A lot of the things are weird and not
And,
really
and
connected to
and
the
by the
story,
way,
right?
it should be mentioned that the bird named Speck is a real sick bird because he asks the
Oh
bird how to
yeah.
punish the guy, and the bird says, give him a second butthole. And so
Yeah, give him a
we
second butthole. Yeah.
so
Yeah, and even I thought the play too was there's this guy, and maybe he should have been known as just this Looney Tune. He's going around talking to this imaginary bird. He does violent things, but you don't really get that. And then at
yeah.
the end, you see very quickly. I mean, the whole story kind of revolves then around this mute prostitute that you see that her mother sold her out because, oh, you're imperfect. You're gonna, but it doesn't play out right. It doesn't play, like, you don't have any emotions of it. Even when you see that reveal, that twist at the end, you're like, "Oh, okay, whatever." And the people just grab this lady and pull her into this cabin. They're gonna kill her. All right.
Yeah.
And then he walks away. And then he says at this one point, "I'm gonna go get that Dr. Tomb. I'm gonna," you don't even get the, but, like, I could say, like, this guy, "Oh, Dirt's in town, trouble's gonna happen." Like, he's just wandering around, so, yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right. This might be one that we don't, end up revisiting. We'll have to see. Maybe we should give it a couple just to see how it is, but what would you give it then?
Well, I'd give it a 5.7 and I will
Okay.
check it back because I like westerns, and I'm still gonna give Sean Lewis the benefit of the doubt. I think maybe the hook is still gonna come, and just it
Yeah.
didn't arrive this first issue, but a 5.7.
That is a tough play, though. If you're gonna have a hook, you gotta hook us in a little bit in that first issue, and I think what he's doing is trying to think that the over the top, is it over the top violence? Because a lot of the stuff you don't see. So I really don't know. I think the hook is it's a Western. There's not a lot of Westerns, and right now, Westerns, at least TV shows, are starting to really make a big comeback, so maybe that's the hook, but I think I'm gonna go 6. I'll go a little bit more positive. I do like the art. And that's what would get me to a 6, but nothing more. You're right. Originally, I was about a 7, thinking it as a one shot. Hey, I come in and out, but it is pretty tropey. But we'll go to the last book, which is the manga, a book, and it's Chainsaw Man. We're going to do chapter 1 by Tatsuki Fujimoto. And the reason why I ended up wanting to do this, first off, I wanted to push, the whole deal of manga on you. This actually is my first, or was my first, manga that I read. Chainsaw Man was my first. I also ended up getting Andrew in Belfast. A little shout out to him. It was his first. I suggested it to him, and then he became a big fan. But the big reason is it has been on hiatus for a long while. It came back this week. So it ended up coming back. It's now going forward again. So I figured that would be a good reason to do the chapter 1 with it, and I get to talk to you about manga in the way that, did you have any sort of learning curve with going right to left? I mean, that's the biggest thing.
I
That's obviously the biggest thing for people, but were you okay with it?
I got used to it. I got used to it. It was yeah, it was okay. It was a little bit of an adjustment, but it
Okay.
was it didn't take long. It didn't take long for me to figure it out, and
I'm telling you, I think that, and I've said this before to people, I think that once you are reading comics, you do get into that mode, whether right to left or left to right. It's more about word bubble progression and panel progression. And I think that just being a comic fan and you've been reading tons of comics, you already have that down. Even if you have to reverse it, you still will catch up with the idea. I think that it would be hard to go if you haven't been reading much. Then you're really trying to learn, panel progression and things. And there's usually not a lot of panels anyway, but sometimes I think that it's a little less of a learning curve for people who are used to comics. You just have to get used to right to left. What's weird is sometimes you'll end up accidentally reading left to right, and then you'll go 3 pages and actually think to yourself, I still could follow it. Like, what happened? I was reading it backwards, and but I do like this, and I'm glad that you like it with the idea of a kid, Denji, who is really, he's a sad sack. You feel bad for him. And he ends up meeting and being very nice to a chainsaw dog, demon, devil. And it's crazy. It's very crazy to try to explain to people what this is about. But you end up having Pachita, who is this devil dog with a chainsaw head, and you have to get in and you really find out that it's more about their interaction, their friendship that ends up winning the day, and it continues as good. But I'll give it to you because I want to hear what you thought about it and what you liked and whatnot.
well, first, what really surprised me here is just as a general comment, I can't believe that the black and white doesn't bother me. And
Yeah.
yet, when I read Gotham Central, for example, or Future State Gotham, it
Hmm.
drives me crazy. And I convinced myself that I just don't like black and white and manga. But here I am reading this, and I realize I don't have any problem with black and white. It really
No.
does come down to just a good story. And uh,
Yeah.
I frankly, I really enjoy this. And what I wish that superhero writers of superheroes of the big two would appreciate is what this manages to do in the first 60 odd pages that I read here, the first chapter essentially, and that is that it's actually not decompressed. Now 60 is a lot, 60 pages is a lot, but we get so much character work. We get into this kid's head, this devil hunter named Denji, and this Pochita dog. And this Pochita is actually it's a demon dog with a chainsaw mouth, and
Hmm.
and he's actually this kid is an obedient kid. He does what he's told, and that's why the yakuza, why the mafia loves him, because they use him to hunt down devils,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they use him that way. And he's basically he does it to earn a living, and he's got to do it because he's got to pay off his father's debts. His father is dead, but the mafia's using him as their kind of like their slave. But they slowly the debt's being paid down of his father's generation, uh and it's so incredibly heartfelt. And the heart and soul of this story is the relationship that he has with his first of all, his
With a
imagine
chainsaw
yeah, with
dog.
the chainsaw dog,
Yeah.
Pochito,
Pochita.
Pochita,
Yeah.
but also more specifically, he dreams of having
Hmm.
bread with jam on it. His dreams are so simple. He dreams of just having a girlfriend to hold him. That's it.
Yep.
He's got his dreams are so simple, and you feel this, you feel his poverty, but yet you feel the love in his heart that he wants to give. But all he
Yeah.
has is this devil dog, and it's man, this took such a huge turn event. What totally threw me, and it really had an impact upon me emotionally. I did not shed a tear in this, but
Yes.
what I did really love his relationship. Like I don't like pets, straight up. I don't like
Okay.
dogs or cats. I hate them.
Hmm.
But I felt his relationship with this stupid looking chainsaw dog, and
Like, so cute.
and when he makes the promise, when there's a rumor going around that if you merge, that if you feed a devil, because you're supposed to kill devils, you're not supposed to
Yeah.
have one as a pet. But there's a in the mythology of this setting, if a devil dog or a devil gets a hold of your blood, it can essentially merge with you,
Hmm.
uh, and that's essentially what ends up happening. He actually tells his dog that you know you can. if it comes down to it, you can take my body, take over my
Mm.
life, live my dreams for me, live a normal life. He makes that sacrifice for a devil because he loves the devil. And the themes here, again, I've said before, I'm a sucker for a good metaphor. The
Yeah,
themes
yeah.
in this story are just incredible. The idea that it's so symbolic of he's got a dark side, and his dark side is this devil, but yet the dark side and the light side come together. It's almost like Jedi and Sith, and they're
Mhm.
team, and they're all combined into one. And even he's got the drawstring. Once they become merged, and he pulls the string, and out
So
pops his
great.
chainsaw nose, and
Yeah, yeah,
just an
and just I'm
outrageous.
telling you, just a horrific
Oh my
chainsaw,
god!
and I agree, everything about what you said, and I do love this, and that's the whole play. You have Denji, this character, I mean, this kid can be pissed off at the world. He could hate everyone. He ends up under debt. His dad committed suicide to get out of a debt from the Yakuza, but now it's passed on to him. He ends up when he goes to the grave, they pull up and say, basically, "You need this amount of money tomorrow. We're going to kill you." And then he ends up with that. He meets this Pochita, this devil dog. He's hurt. He ends up feeling for him and looks and sees himself, like you said, that whole light and dark and whatnot. But he sees Pochita as somebody else who's beaten down and hurt, and he's nice enough to end up. But there, it doesn't seem the play here. If it was at the end, like I'm just going to do this because now I can do this or that. He wants a bond. He wants a family. And the dreams that he has, like you said, he wants jam on toast. That's his big dream. Like he doesn't sit there, and a lot of writers and a lot of comics at this point will sit there and go about how, the world's treating the character and the character's angry, and this is only because of this or whatnot. Here's this Denji who's just been kicked around, and he still dreams, and they're very simple dreams. He wants to hug a girl. He wants to get jammed. That changes a little. He wants a little more specific body part down the line, but it's still it ends up he's just a kid who wants to be loved and wants to have a life. And when he does end up, getting some things, these are things that he does appreciate. So you end up behind him. You want him to get some sort of win. And he still just gets, and he's obedient, but he's obedient in a way that they treat him like a dog. They even say that. But I love the combo with him and Pochita because as this goes on, and it's very quick, but you get that
Well,
solid base
well,
of character.
Pochita says to him that I'll give you. Pochita says to him that I'll give you my heart if you show me your dreams. And
Yep,
I
yep,
love it's a flip, it's a complete flip of the usual selling your soul to the devil. Usually the devil approaches you and says,
yeah, yeah,
I will give you your dreams, but I want your soul. But this is different. This is the human. This is Denji, an innocent boy, saying to a devil,
yep,
look, take my soul and you can live your dreams. It's giving
yeah,
to the devil with nothing, and he wants nothing in return.
yeah,
All he wants is for this devil to have a great life. It's a
yeah.
completely selfless act on the part of this
It
young
is
man, and
complete,
it's
and
so
that's the
heroic.
connection, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it is heroic, and that's the thing he says. He even gives him like tip, like, "Listen, I'll die. Wait till they bury me, then go." Because he says, "I hear that devils can take over bodies as well, do that." But in that, you end up Pochita also being such a gem that he ends up not just doing that, but he wants to merge and help Denji as well. But also, you get that little bit of okay, there's Denji. He's using a devil to be a devil hunter. The Yakuza see this, but they're not good guys. They end up thinking, oh, well, you know what? Let's do that. This kid, and really, legitimately, the only thing that's keeping him with the is he thinks that he has to pay back this debt. He's afraid he could actually use Pochita and they could go and try to kill these Yakuza and maybe they could get away, but he never thinks of that because he's a good guy. But they're jealous of this and say, if he uses the devils, why can't we? And they go out looking around. Oh, let's find. Unfortunately, they're bad guys and find a zombie devil
yeah.
that pretty much ends up making them zombies, and that's them wanting too much. He even says, and the play here was so good when he's there, and they take him, they set him up. This zombie devil wants to kill all the devil hunters. Let's kill him. So they get him to this warehouse. And when they are just slicing and dicing him, one of his last thoughts as he's dying is that idea of maybe I asked for too much. Maybe
Yeah.
that jam on toast is too big a dream. Maybe I thought this. And you're like, "No, that's not too big. You're a good guy."
Yeah,
Because he even says, "Why do these yakuza, these guys, they had all that stuff. Why are they wanting more?" And you get that idea of, wanting more, and he is heroic. At one point, he's also in pieces. I mean, it's funny because we're talking about this, and when you get the character work in a lot of the mangas, the character work's so strong of the characters that you kinda it's crazy situations, and like in any sort of, can you imagine if we're reading, say, John Kent, Superboy, Superman, and he is cut into pieces and thrown in the garbage? I mean, you'd be like,
yeah,
"Oh my god," people lose their mind. But you're
yeah.
there thinking this, and it's like, "Oh my god, it's so good."
Yeah, no, no, I love it, and it actually reminded me of an expression in self help circles uh, that one of Denji's arguable weaknesses is that he was never very assertive. He was always a kid that
Yeah.
did what he was told. And one thing that Ponjita, the devil, upon merging with him, helps him become. There's that old expression that says, don't be passive. Don't convince
Yeah.
yourself that being virtuous and passive is the way to go. No, wrong. You should be a monster. We should all be absolute
Mhm.
monsters and then learn how to control it. And that's what he becomes. So in the end, he becomes a devil. He merges with the
Oh, yeah.
devil, but he learns how to control it. So he really is like a good guy. So he's not above becoming powerful and angry and even monstrous. And of course, he looks monstrous with the
Yeah.
human looking chainsaw, but he's able to control it. And the ultimate sign of that is at the end when he confronts this secret at the end of the first chapter. There's this mysterious woman. These women, I guess, these
Mhm.
people in
It's like
black.
that.
Yeah,
It's 2 guys, and it's like Men in Black
yeah,
that they do
exactly.
show up. They're an
And
organization, yes.
yeah, and it was just a nice scene because he talked about wanting to hold a girl before he died,
Mhm.
and of course his last words were, hold me, and she just senses that this creature was a good creature and held him, and I thought that was a very touching scene,
Mhm.
and Denji fully expected, I believe, to die. He expected to die,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, and
Yeah.
and there was also, I don't know if you caught it, but early on there was a little note at the near the beginning where he mentioned that his mother died. He was coughing up
Yep.
blood, and
Yeah, it
his
was
mother
coughing up
coughed
blood.
up blood before she died. So I got the sense that he's dying already. So
Mhm. Yeah, he
probably
was. Yeah.
yeah, so merging, so that even adds more to it. The merging with this devil, he would have died anyway, even if he wasn't part of this larger plot. And
Mm.
so that even adds to the gravitas of the storyline and the character work, and just extremely impressive, and everything. It should be mentioned here that this kid's already sold his own body parts at the
Oh, yeah,
beginning
his
right away.
balls,
He
I
got
mean,
rid of
he
his
sold a left ball.
yeah, yeah, he got rid of
Uh,
his left nut for 60,000 yen. He got rid of his
yeah,
kidney
yeah,
for 1.2 million, his right eye for 300,000 yen.
his eye.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they mentioned all the stuff that he got rid of to try to pay off his father's debt. I mean, this kid
yeah.
is wow.
And I like the play here is when Pochita ends up merging with him, and he's sliced and diced. He ends up in the trash. And when the blood drips off of Denji and goes in Pochita's mouth, this ends up bonding them again. And because of that, maybe Pochita could have just went on his own, but he ended up bonding him, becomes the heart inside of Denji and has the pull string that you end up where it can activate the Chainsaw Man. But when he gets out of there, he doesn't have that eye patch anymore. It's completely healed him. So his body is better now. It's on there. And I thought that that was a pretty cool deal. And then when he does go in, he just goes to town. He kills everybody in there as Chainsaw Man. Like you said, he's finally able to stand up for himself with that combo of him and Pochita. And even then, it's funny because he's like, "Oh man, I worked out my debt." Like it doesn't make sense because he's doesn't have anybody to sell it to. He's killing everybody. But in my mind, he's also playing out like, yeah, they're all dead, so he didn't have to worry about it anyway. But when the woman comes in, and we don't get names really, they just come in, and you end up having that as they are official devil hunters. And when they come in, there's that little thing, like you said, a little thing earlier when the one guy says to the head yakuza, at least this little, group, why does he do this? What's going on? He could do, and he says, no respectful devil hunter will do what they're doing for the yakuza. They're on like a black market deal. That's why, and they're taking full advantage. It also ends up being almost like the company store. back in the day where they end up being able to say to Denji, "Okay, I'll give you this much, but you have to give me that for a finder's fee." He never ends up making. He's never going to get out of it, but he never steps up for himself. But finally, he does. As the Chainsaw Man, that's horrific, and he just goes to town on everyone. And when this group comes in with this woman, they just see a pile and like somebody beat us to it, and these guys are ready to probably take down Denji, but she recognizes something in him and says, "He smells different. He doesn't smell like a human or devil. It's something between. I think that this is a person you could see by his face." And I like when he's passing out. I mean, he is in trouble. "Well, what will I eat for breakfast?" Because she says, "I can kill you now as a devil. You want that? I'll do that. But you can come with me as my dog." Again, you're wondering, like, why would you do this, Denji? You just got out of that. But it is a little better because he says, "What would I have for breakfast then?" And she goes down and it is toast and jam plus a bunch of things. He's like, "Oh, that sounds great." And he's all excited about it. And that's how it ends. And yeah, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good start for something. It's one of the better first chapters, I think, in some of the current, or at least the last bunch of years manga. But it gives you that idea, and I think that that's the strength of manga, is giving you strong character work in that first chapter, that you not just, and I'm not saying character work as, oh, he was born here and he grew up there, and he's more of the connection that you feel for these characters, and you want to follow them, and you want to see more of what's going on because of how nice, heroic, whatever it is, they end up being able to do that. And usually it is with, you're not going to get that complex. You get one big thing, but it grabs you. And I think that this plays out pretty well. So
Yeah.
what would you give it?
I would give this well, for my first manga, I would give this a 9. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
A solid
Yeah,
9.
I'm a 9.5. I really do like this. Is I've read this about 20 times already, and every time I always have a smile. I'm like, "Oh my," especially again, I've read the whole series up till now, and I end up knowing some things that happen and what these characters are, so it makes me laugh some
Well,
of the things that they say or whatnot, but
I want to
it's
quickly comment that Denji is so naive in a good way, but he's I
yeah.
mean really this girl that he stumbles upon who, she thinks of him like a dog, even calls him a
Oh, yeah.
dog, and yet all she had to do was mention that, "You'll be my servant, I'll
I
feed
know.
you," and he's all happy. "Oh my god, I met somebody
Yeah.
that'll feed me as long as and she'll even hold me too," you know? I
Yep.
mean, it's like I mean, it's he actually, because in actual fact, he was always treated as less than a dog in real life. I mean, the animals were
Yeah.
treated better than him, and so, it's gonna be
To
interesting
step up, right?
to see his character journey as this story moves forward because he's so used to being less than human and being treated that way that even when he's treated like a dog, he feels like it's a dream come true because
Yep.
it's so much better than from where he came from. And what the greatest compliment that I can give the writer here, this Tatsuki guy, whatever
Mhm.
Fujimoto or whatever, I mean, is that I felt that I felt this
Yeah.
guy's, I felt his pain and his angst and his joy and his love and his
Mhm.
sacrifice and his selflessness. And again, that was in the first 180 pages here, I guess, that
Mhm.
I have up showing up here on the screen. And again, it's impressive. I can definitely see the attraction of manga here because even if I never read any more of this particular story,
Yeah.
I got something out of it right now. I got it. There's so many life lessons in
Mhm.
this chapter. I don't need to read anymore, but I want to read more, and I can definitely see the appeal of manga. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate
that's
that you
cool.
recommend it. So yeah.
Nice, and I'll tell you the idea when you said about, future state Gotham and the idea, you have the pencil steel. It's weird because if you go back and look at that, to me, that just looks like a Western comic that's kind of unfinished and doesn't have color. These, they really work on, and, that's their thing, but you end up these are every week they do this. This is, the chapter that you read, when they're doing that, you have another chapter next week. They come out weekly for the most part. You'll have some, skip weeks or whatever, but it's mostly every week, and they're able to do that. And with that, the shading, it's not just fully just pencils. There's a lot. The inks are very big in it and all that. And I think that what they really do center on the emotions of the characters, the facial deals and whatnot, that I think it's a little more impressive because, again, these are things that I said too. I don't really like black and white deal. I can't read from right to left. And then once I tried, you get very into it. You get, you understand it once you get that right to left. And also, the art will not bother you as much for most people. Also, I wanted to ask you, did you realize, and I forgot to tell you, that when you end up having flashback scenes, they end up the page is black. The paneling is black. If you go back and look where you have Denji at the beginning when he's at his dad's grave, that's a flashback, and you end up having where the borders are solid black. I really like that, and I wish that they would do that in the Western comics just to show, because sometimes you don't have to have like back in the day, this is that or whatever. You just do that, and that, which is kind of a funny play because when you end up getting a volume of it, some people will look, and if you look at the pages from the top of the volume, just closed volume, and it's all black, you're like, "Ooh, we got a lot of flashback chapters in this one." It's
Uh,
kind of a funny
I,
deal, but
I never made that connection until you pointed it out. But you're
yeah, I
absolutely
forgot
right.
to
But
tell you that's a big thing of and I really like it,
yeah,
because then you don't have to worry about telling people, but that's the thing. The way that this goes anyway, you didn't really need it because you can
no,
see. You see the
exactly. That's
progression.
exactly right.
The
And but
Yeah.
I think that probably subconsciously, I that blackness,
Yeah.
that it
Almost
reinforced
like
the
a
flashback
dream come
nature of it. So
I'm telling you, it's pretty cool. I actually really like that's one of the things that when I first started reading, I really thought was a really cool idea, and I thought maybe they should just bring that, but nobody wants to take good ideas, that aren't that like, everybody's afraid, "Oh, I can't do that because then they'll say we stole it." Just use good ideas. I think it's a pretty cool deal with it, but yeah, I give this a 9.5, and I really liked it, but I'm glad that you liked it. And, this was a special occasion. I said it has been a long while since we had a new chapter, and he just came back with it. So I thought we'd mix it in. I don't want to get too over the top. Oh my God, we're going to do manga all the time. But eventually we'll slip one in again as well and see if you like a bunch of other things. And we'll try to do like something new the next time. But that's about it, right?
yeah, that's it. And yeah, thanks, Jim, for having you join me, me joining you
Yeah.
again, and putting this
I'm
on our.
telling you, I should thank you. You're the one who's doing most of the work when we do this. I'm just sitting here yapping. You have all the cool things, and I really do like the way that you play out the videos. And just as a shout out, people who might be on listening on the podcast or somewhere, you go and check out Rocky's YouTube channel. We'll have all that in the links
Yeah.
as well because I
Well,
think
certainly,
that's pretty
and
cool.
everyone watching on my YouTube channel, check out Word Science. I think people are, if anybody's into comic books, you should be subscribing to the Word Science DC, Word Science Marvel, the podcast. Join the Get Fresh crew. It's awesome.
Uh-uh.
I got to
Nah.
give a shout out to that because it's so much fun. Because we talk comics in the Slack all the time. I during the day
Yeah.
when I'm at work, I probably spend often spend too much time on the Slack as opposed to doing my job. But I got to
uh,
pay the mortgage after all. But so be it.
exactly. Yeah. One of the things I do want to point out, and Luke Holly would get mad if I didn't, we do have a manga podcast where each day of the week we have a manga reading club. One of them is Chainsaw Man. So if you would want to listen, I think right now, this week, we're up to chapter 8. So they just kind of started so you can get and jump on. And also, I want to let you know, Rocky, like you have this oversized chapter, the first chapter. Once they go down, the second chapter is usually about 30 pages. Then you get to most of the others being between 19 and 21. So they end up being very quick reads. But when you end up going forward, they do pack a lot of story in those that you'd be amazed. The idea of how much story progression, there's no deep compression, like you said. They go for it. They tell because in the manga world, if you aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing, you get canned. You end up getting cut. They're very brutal with it. There's only a couple spaces, say, on the Weekly Shonen Jump. They only have like 20 some deals. And if you're not doing it, if you're not popular, and they have polls, they send out all these things, you will get cut and they'll bring in something else. So that's another thing that keeps them on their toes, which
Mm.
a lot of times in the Western deal, DC, Marvel, the big two, a lot of people seem to be resting on their laurels. So I'll tell you right now, Clune read on that Wonder Woman book would have been
Oh,
gone a long time ago if that was manga. They would have been cut loose a long time
oh
ago.
man,
Uh, yeah,
that's
yeah.
painful. That's
It
parody. That's
is.
painful.
Yes,
Vile,
it is.
vile milk drinkers. How
Oh, yeah,
far
soy
Wonder Woman
boy.
has fallen,
Fine.
now battling vile milk drinkers. I couldn't
Oh,
believe when I
goodness
read that, but
gracious.
whatever.
I know. I know. That's for other shows, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, thanks, Rocky.
All right.
Thanks for having me on this. I really do enjoy it. And yeah, everybody check out both of our things. I'll put stuff when I have my side of things. I'll put all the show notes and all the links to everything. So if you want to listen to more of stuff that I do, you can do that. More stuff with Rocky, and hopefully people enjoy us coming together for this.
You betcha. And until next week, we'll catch you later.
See ya.